What is up, everybody? Escape211 here. We are on the test server, and I'm playing back some footage. We got a lot to cover today because we got the new mech, the Mimicker, as well as a new weapon, the Howler. So I'm just going to play back some footage of each and then talk about each individually. First, I want to focus on the new mech, and this one is significant. This is a scout, but as you guys already know, this is one with 32 energy, and that is a big deal. This, along with like Blockhorn, is the first time they've gone 32 energy in other classes. So it's going to have some significance there, especially because scouts and speed are so strong in this game. First of all, I will say, like, functionally or aesthetically, this looks a lot like Redeemer. Feels like it functions the same way in terms of movement. Its actual stats are pretty darn good. Its stat, even though its speed is not the fastest, it's 27, which is pretty good. And then the 32 energy, of course. Its HP is on the lower end of the scouts, but it's still not too bad, especially considering the 32 energy it has. Its ability is where it is probably the most unique and interesting, though. This ability is one where you need to scan a target, and then depending on the actual target, that will change. Now, they kind of lay this out in the description of it, but it's based on the class of the target. As you can see, as I'm looking at targets, it will give a little different indicator for it, and it has the different tasks of either an attacker, a support, a scout, or a tank, and that will give different things depending on it. I found that whether it is the scout or the tank, you can be a little more open and aggressive while you're using the ability, because you either get a shield or stealth, so it's harder to target you. And then if you want to be more defensive, you would pick the other ones, especially the healing, just because it will help you in the downtime or in between firing. So there's a lot of potential and flexibility with the ability, but it's not one that directly helps you in combat. So this guy does end up feeling a little squishy, so you have to be the one that's more preemptive in how you deal with your targets. And then depending on the target you have, it's a bit situational, because you may or may not be able to be more aggressive or not. What's interesting is how the stats all lay out as far as the actual like shield that you get. As you level that up, that changes, but the shield is pretty much the exact same as the Bastion shield, so that gives you an idea of how much like structural integrity it has. And then the healing, interestingly enough and sadly, is better than MD's personal healing that it does. It actually is slightly less good than its team healing, but because it's only for itself, it's not a team heal, it does better than MD in the individual heal. And the actual team heal of MD is only slightly better than this thing. So even its heal for itself is pretty much, you know, as good or close to as good as MD's healing, which is pretty sad, but it's also legendary. MD's only uncommon, so that's kind of expected. And then the attacker, if you get one of those, it's just a straight damage boost, which you want to be aggressive with that, but because you have no defenses with this mech or anything like that, you do have to be cautious and careful with it. I'm running it with the Storm Racks, but this is actually one where you could run something more aggressive or different if you wanted, like Revoker 16 on this. I would think if you could play it well and position yourself well, could be really, really strong. Especially, you know, depending on if you want to be aggressive in the stealth or the, you know, shield mode when you can use it, and then just the straight damage if you can kill something very quickly. I could see that being pretty useful. Interestingly enough, though, at least on the test server here, as you could just see there, the brick houses are still seen as tanks. They should be seen as support, but, you know, they're still seen as tanks, but that's just how it is, I guess. But that gives you an overall general idea of this mech. I actually think this is pretty effective, and it would be really interesting to see if somebody were to run like a full scout hangar and they wanted to have something at 32 energy. This would be good, right? So you do your usual trifecta of the Nomad, the Surge, and the Eclipse, but then also this and Lacewing, and you could have a super speed hangar and still be very competitive. So a lot of interesting potential with this mech. It's not one that I think you have to get, but it's up there. I think it's going to be, you know, pretty strong in the meta for a lot of people. But that's overall what I was going to say about this mech. So let's move over to the Howler. All right, so the Howler here is the new close range weapon, and the one that we have right now is the 12 and the 16. So we're getting the high end of it, so we're actually getting a good view of what it will feel like in terms of its overall meta strength. And I have to be honest, this one underwhelms me. I know this is legendary, but it feels like it lags behind on the big dogs, namely the Revoker, right? Just because mods are in the game, this thing only has 4 shots. It actually feels like it shoots similar to like a frag gun would in terms of it having a certain amount in the chamber. Because you want to get close to your target, it is kind of limiting. Now this does have pretty decent range, and actually the range is very similar to the Revoker even when you consider implants, which is pretty good, but this is more implant heavy than the Revoker if you want to get the damage and the range, and then the also reload, because this only has 4 shots, and 4 shots when mods are considered will not kill anything, so reload will probably be fairly important. So it's decently heavy on the implant needs for it. And then just the overall sense of like its damage, even though the damage is similar to the Revoker doesn't need to reload, and its actual fire rate will get faster as you get closer. The fire rate on this isn't impressive, and the clip feels too small to me to actually make good use of killing anything. So for a legendary, yeah, this feels underwhelming. I gotta say, this feels like a slightly better frag gun, which isn't really saying much since the frag gun has largely been out of like meta when it comes to close range weapons. I honestly feel like this would be worse than the Ember gun, although I haven't really tested it comparatively, and I actually feel like I did bad in other modes. I went into 2v2 because I feel like this might be the case where you could use it, where you could lock somebody down, because if you have too many targets on screen, again with that 4 clip that you have on this, you're not going to be killing things fast enough or significantly enough to really like get a solid use out of this. It does feel like the reload is a little too long given that it's 4 clips, and the fire rate is too slow given the same kind of thing. So overall, I feel like it doesn't quite compare. So I guess I would say it's probably in similar line to like the Repeater, which has been an okay weapon, but generally viewed by a lot of people as being a little bit below the Ember gun, and of course, especially with mods now, below the Revoker. I just don't know why anybody would, get this over those 2 weapons right now, unless there was something significant that it changes. It does also feel like this has to deal decently with mods in the shield, whereas I mean, again, I don't use Revoker a ton, because I haven't really been playing on my main account with it enough, but if I did, I feel like it gets around the mods a little bit better based on its, kind of boomerang or magnetic effect. So all the damage doesn't just go to mods, and again, because you can get close with it, because you don't have to worry about reloads, it also is a counter to other things like Guardian that this will struggle against. Even if you were to use Surge on this, you're not going to be able to kill something with those 4 shots, and you're going to have to get out. You'll probably die. Same kind of thing with the Zephyr. The reason I'm using the Hemlock is because I should be able to use this and get out at least quick enough after those 4 shots, so it's okay. I could see this working good with Soulless if you want to do the 16, but again, that's probably limited because it's only going to work really well against players. If you were trying to do this against the bots, Soulless doesn't really do as good as it should. Man, there are a lot of Hemlocks out on this. I forgot how many were here when I was playing this. But yeah, that's just generally how I feel. Stat-wise, this is just okay. It's just something that I think isn't going to be something anybody needs to buy or is going to feel is, really filling the place of something impressive. I would say even between this and the Repeater, I almost want to go for Repeater because it reloads on the fly and it's like a shotgun, so it has a spread and will hit multiple targets. I don't think this hits multiple targets. It seems to have no actual perk to the weapon itself. Aesthetically, though, I really like it. I think it looks cool and it's unique, but I don't see any benefit that this weapon brings in terms of whether it's its raw stats or like any perks that would make you choose it over other stuff. And yeah, like this was one of the better matches I had, and only getting 10 kills with this thing in a 2v2 just doesn't feel like the greatest against bots like this. So generally, those are my thoughts on both the mech and the weapon. What do you guys think of these? You can feel free, as always, to comment below, and we'll see you out there on the battlefield.